ਖਾਲਸਾ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ
ਫਤਿਹ.
ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ
So, everyone, today we're gonna have a katha today, a katha talk, and it's gonna be the three main topics gonna be covered are Lohri, Sangrandh, and the Jali Mukthe. So the talks by Bhai Sukhwinder Singh Sukhi Baba from the UK, and they'll be doing the katha vichar today. So Bhai Sabji, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕਰ ਲਓ.
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਜੀ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ ਜੀ. So I'm just gonna do a small job before we start, so if everybody like to join in. ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਓੰਕਾਰ ਸਤਨਾਮ ਕਰਤਾ ਪੁਰਖ ਨਿਰਭਉ ਨਿਰਵੈਰ ਅਕਾਲ ਮੂਰਤ ਅਜੂਨੀ ਸੈਭੰ ਗੁਰ ਪ੍ਰਸਾਦ ਜਪ ਆਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਜੁਗਾਦਿ ਸੱਚ ਹੈ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਨਾਨਕ ਹੋਸੀ ਭੀ ਸੱਚ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ 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 ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ. So Satsang ji, thank you so much again for having me back. Quite surprised. Usually when I get invited for something, I don't usually get a call back, other than to maybe ask for their money back. But so I feel quite privileged and sort of honoured I've been asked back to share some Katha Vichar with you guys. So thank you again, and I hope everyone's well and doing good. If you're from the UK, you know that we're in our third or fourth, can't even remember now, lockdown. I think I hope everyone's doing well. During the lockdown, they've got all the essential items at home, like toilet paper. Maybe if you're not from the UK, you may not get that joke, but yes, this is what the UK people go crazy for when there's a lockdown. So anyway, thank you very much, as I said, and as you've heard, today's topics we're gonna talk about is one, Lohri, and also it was Sangrandh. So Maghi di Sangrandh, so Magh da Mahina has started. So that's the Desi month, or Makar Sankranti, also known as. And then also, obviously, quite important that we in this sort of month, we talk about Muktsar Sahib, Mela Maghi Muktsar. So the Itihas of Muktsar, where the 40 became Charlie Mukthe. So as we remember them in Ardas, so Char Sahibzade, so Panj Pyare, Char Sahibzade, Charlie Mukthe. So we remember the 40 Mukthe as well. So we're just going to talk about that. Now, I will try and fit in as much as I can. And there is not a lot on Lohri, to be honest. Although you can, when you actually talk about the topic of Lohri itself, you can have a sort of like a long conversation about society and the what we can actually learn from the story of Lohri and how we can apply that to our daily lives and our way of thinking and better ourselves, better our thoughts, how we view the world. So there's a lot you can actually learn from it. But the story itself of Lohri is that at the heart of it, like the history of it, is not that long. So I'm just going to start with that then. So Lohri, the itihas jehda are now, the word actual Lohri, they reckon comes from the two words, because there used to be if you go to any Indian shop now, you'd see like obviously the pumped up prices of atta, because they think people are going to panic again. So just going kind of off topic a little bit, but the Punjabi shopkeepers were proper kind of making the exploiting people. I went to buy some pindiyan, which I like. I don't know if you guys like it, but normally you get them for about £4 or something per kilo or something like that. But it's about £15 it was. So I was like, forget that. We'll just have some, loon joyan wali roti at home. So the sabjiyan went up. But anyway, if you go to Indian shops now, you'll see on the shelves something called a riodi, gordi riodi, khandi riodi. It's like a sweet thing. It's like a riodi. It's usually a round shape, like a sweet, and it has til on them. So til is like the sesame seeds. So it used to be known as til riodi. So, and as time went on, it just became Lohri, and then from that, it kind of like the slang of it just became Lohri. So that's where the word actually comes from, because on that day, people started. Initially, it was people would give sugar and sweet stuff like god and things like that to celebrate as khushi to each other. But then it started kind of like then the corporate people got involved. They're like, well, you can make some money out of this. Why don't we just make some stuff from the same sugar and sell it a higher price? So anyway, this is what they started doing. So Riodian you get, that's where it comes from, the name of it. And the story of it, there's the main one of the significance of Lohri. The main one is basically related to something someone called Dullah Patiala. So if you've been to Punjab, or even here, like sometimes they have Lohri kind of like theme, parties. There's all sorts of themes now. There might even be a COVID themed party. You never know. And then they they sing this particular kind of song, Sundar Mundriye Ho Tera Kaun Bichara Ho. So there's like a whole big kind of song, and it's related to the history of Dulla Patti. So basically, who Dulla Patti was actually, he belonged to Patti sort of clan, and sort of kind of going back to the lineage of some some Rajputs basically. So he was in the times of Akbar, and what had happened was he didn't agree with the Mughal Raj, and obviously he did Bagawat. So as he did Bagawat, he then started his own sort of like little gang of sort of bandits. Now, if you've heard of the story of Robin Hood, so he was like a Robin Hood, so he would rob the rich, and then he would distribute that wealth to the poor, and so he became like quite a hero locally. And the other thing that he would do, because it was quite common in those days where the sort of like people in charge of areas, sort of the hakams of the areas, they were like put in place by the central kind of, you could say, government, so like the governors. So they were quite known for, if they were obviously of quite a low character, they would kind of go around, and if they see like a girl of age of marriage and things like that, and if they would sort of like them, they would actually abduct them, and then obviously sort of do uh the things that they would do with them, and then they would return them back home. So it was sort of like a common practice. And what Dullah Patiwala would do is would always go and rescue those girls. So this one particular story, and then the song that they sing about, relates to one of those stories, where there was a Brahmin. He was quite poor, and he had two daughters called Sundri and Mundri, and they were quite good looking, and their marriage had been sort of arranged, but because the Brahmin was poor, he didn't have enough money to marry them off, so he was just kind of like waiting to get enough money. So whilst he was waiting, the one of those governors actually saw his daughters and basically wanted them for himself, and he found out. And then who would he turn to? He turned to Dullah Patiala. So then Dullah Patiala then took them back, and sorry, basically took them under his protection, and then spoke to the family of the boys who they were engaged to, and then arranged the whole wedding, and then he got them married off. And then he cut a long story short, so they were safe, and then they lived happily ever after. And then from that day onwards, and every single year then, because it happened at night, they had to happen at night because otherwise the authorities would have found out. And then they lit the fire that day, and then obviously around that fire they got married, and then it kind of like became tradition. And so every year they celebrated um, that day, and they would sing that song Dulla Patiyala. So it got sort of associated with that. So every single year, that's what they would do. That's one of them. And then the other story that is attached to Lohri is the story of Bhagat Prahlad ji as well. So though most of you are aware that in Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj and in Sri Dasam Sahib Ji, it talks about the Bhagat Prahlad. So Bhagat Prahlad, his father was Harnakas, and Harnakas did a lot of bhakti, and he got a boon from Akal Purukh, from God, that so he may so he kind of like asked for these special things, how he could not be killed. And because it was extremely, so kind of like almost impossible to kill him, he started considering himself as Paramatma, as God. But his son, however, was actually a true Bhagat, so Bhagat Prahlad, and he refused to bow to his father as Paramatma, as God. So to kind of like punish him, Harnakas, his father, thought of ways of killing him, to kind of also, because what was happening was people around, obviously his friends, Prahlad's friends, and other people had started to also doubt Harnakas, and because they were saying like, if his own son doesn't believe him to be Paramatma, then how can we? So he wanted to kind of like quash that. So he tried killing Prahlad, and one of the times he did that was, he had a sister. Her name was Holika, and she had this special sort of blanket that was basically fireproof, and if she would hold that over her, if there was like fire anyway, it wouldn't burn her. So the plan was for her to hold Prahlad in her laps, and basically the fire would be lit around her, and that way, he'd be punished and he'd die. So what had happened, obviously, when she sat on that fire, the fire actually burnt through that blanket and actually burnt Holgam, but Prahlad was saved. And then from that day onwards, people started to celebrate that day as Lohri, and they would obviously burn wood at night, and they would pray to fire, and then they would also kind of like pray to fire so that just like how no harm came to Prahlad, so no harm would come to their sons either. Okay, so if you noticed, I mentioned the word sons because Lohri's kind of really used to be quite heavily associated with, as if you had a baby boy in the family, then it was time for happiness, time for kushi, and then they would celebrate its first, Diwali if that came first, and then also they would celebrate Lohri for that child, and also if you had got married and and then your marriage was then celebrated the first year. So first Lohri that came after you getting married, it was celebrated. So it was mainly associated with if you had a son, and like how the sort of mentality is within our culture, where if you have a boy, then it's comes the laddu and stuff, things like that. And then I actually don't like laddus, to be honest, unless they're motichur. They're really nice, but I like barfi, to be honest. But anyway, so it's kind of associated with that, which is obviously not obviously it is definitely not part of Sikhi in that sense. And then that has now, however, has changed in the recent years. People celebrate the birth of the girl as well, because when there's more education now, as more people kind of get attached to Gurbani, so they kind of finding out more and more, and changing some of these traditions to kind of like make them come in line with Sikhi as well. So kind of in a nutshell, that's what's actually celebrated on Lohri, so every year. So in another way, you can look at the Prahlad story and the Harnaka story as good over evil. That when Prahlad was sitting with fire all around him, and he was like sure death, he remembered Bhagwan. So he remembered, obviously, Bhagwan to him was Vishnu Bhagwan. So he remembered Vishnu Bhagwan, and Vishnu Bhagwan basically saved him. But what we actually take from it is that the whole world is like a whole fire. And then every single day, every single person who's engrossed in this and this fire of Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Moh, lust, anger, more attachment, and then the Maya itself, this illusion, people are getting burnt every single day. But if we remember Akal Purkh Vaheguru every single day in our lives, just like how Prahlad remembered, and the way you remember is you actually feel the heat, you actually feel that you are in danger. And this is how we truly Japanam, as in like to ways to connect, not out of fear of anything, but out of love. So love, like how Prahlad had that, doesn't matter if it's sort of fire. Now fire destroys everything in its path, but Prahlad had that faith in Paramatma that it will not destroy me if I remember Paramatma. So just like that, today what we learn from these sort of stories as well. We take sort of obviously we put our Sikhi sort of lens on. We see things through the Sikhi lens, and then every sort of tihar that we have, there's something to be learnt from it. So just like how Prahlad had that praying with Paramatma, that he actually sat on there having that faith that Paramatma will save him from that fire. So that was the story of Lohri. And then obviously it was Sangrandh on the 14th, and the month that has started is Magh da mahina jehda chadhiya. So those of you who've gone to the Gurdwara Sahib on that day, you would have heard the Gyani Singhs read from Bara Maha. Now, Bara is 12, Maha is months. So, and then this month, this Desi month that has started is called Magh. And Magh Majjan Sang Sadhua Turi Kar Isnan Har Ka Naam Dhyaye Sun Sabna No Kar Daan. So the tradition of Magh. So why is Maharaj saying that Magh in this Magh Majjan Sang Sadhua? So Tudi Kar Isnan. So why is Guru Sahib Ji telling us to go and find in this month, find the Tudi, the dust of those sadhus. Now, sadhu is somebody who has control over their karam indre and gyan indre. So indriya basically like your hands, your feet, your mind, your tongue. So anything that basically has contact with this world, and they have total control on them. So they don't let them take over. So like with the hands, they will always do seva, change kam. With their tongue, they will always speak the sweetest words. They will always speak Paramatma's name. Kisi nu mada nahi bolde. So they have that control. Hai na? So those are people called sadhe hoye, jinnah ne sadhya hoya. So what Maharaj is saying in this month, go and find those sadhus and go and do ishnan. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਧੂੜੀ ਦਾ ਨਾਲ ਇਸ਼ਨਾਨ ਕਰੋ. their charan, the dust from their charan, है ना, from their feet. And then Maharaj say har ka naam dhyaye sun sabna no kar daan. So obviously in this month people do sort of daan, sort of charity work as well. But what Maharaj is actually saying is that har ka naam dhyaye sun, in this month, that Hari Paramatma, who Harya means basically Har comes from the word Hari, and Hari is the ones who basically brings life to everything. So the Chaitanya Shakti that brings life to everything, that is Paramatma. So that's Hari. Hai na? And then Maharaj is saying, meditate on that naam and the Tyai Sun, and then also listen as well. Sunanamiya. We speak and we listen as well. It's very important not to just speak, but to listen as well. Every time you say Vaheguru, you must listen to that shabd. Every time you do your part, you should be able to hear the part as well. It's not like when we start and then our mind kind of says, okay, I'm off, you carry on, and then I'll be back when you is, doing the slok at the end. Or I might kind of pop in between. That's not proper bhakti. So Maharaj is saying that har ka naam dhyaye sun. So kanna naal onu suno, listen to that naam, and with your rasna, with your tongue, repeat Maharaj's name. But in the beginning of it, Guru Sahib is saying Magh Majjan Sang Sadhua. So what basically used to happen before, obviously Sikhi, people had different ways of trying to connect to Paramatma. So there was actually a person by the name of Bhardwaj Muni. Now, Bhardwaj Muni was a spiritual person, and he sort of found a way to connect people to Paramatma. And what he would do is there's a place called Pragraj. So now Pragraj is a place where, so in India, you see there's three main rivers. So you have Ganga, so the Ganges, as they say, Jamuna, and there's another one called Saraswati. Now, and Pragraj is a place where all three come together. Two of them that you can actually physically see come together, and then the third one, Saraswati, actually comes together, but in a gupt form. So that means is that they can't see where it's coming from, but it comes and joins those two rivers, and that place is called Pragraj, and then where those three meet is called Tribeni. So what he would do, he would call all like kind of sadhus. So this guy called Bhardwaj, he would call them, and then they would go and do Ishnan at that place. And even today, they do Ishnan there as well. People go and do Ishnan. But Guru Sahib Ji is not only talking about the, the cleanliness from, of the physical body, but also the cleanliness of the mind and of within. Now, Bhardwaj Muni actually understood that concept. So not only people would come, so he knew that obviously if I say that come and do Tirash Ishnan here, they would come and do Ishnan, and they would use that as a bahana, as an excuse to get people together. And then what he would do after they were there, then he would basically do katha, and he'll talk about Paramatma, and talk about the gun, that virtues that they need to kind of like obtain, and they'll talk about how to actually cleanse the mind as well. So they talk about Paramatma, they talk about Nam, they talk about Bhakti. Well, so that used to happen, but it just kind of like got reduced to just having an Ishnan kind of thing. So Guru Sahib is saying that Mag Majjan Sang Sadhua, that Guru Sahib is saying, yeah, have Ishnan, but also have Ishnan of Sadhan di Turi, meaning that you should go and do vichar with the sadhus. And by vichar, what Maharaj is actually saying is actually when you sit down and when you do bhakti with sadhus, you connect a lot better because their energy. So it's just basically like, how you have your phone, and in certain places the signal's quite weak, and certain places there's no signal. But then you go kind of like, near, say, like a tower, or where there's, good coverage, you get a better signal. So what those sadhus are like those kind of points where they are like kind of linked to the satellite, to Paramatma, basically. And when you go near them, that energy kind of vibrates more, and then you connect more. And when Guru Sahib Ji talks about doing vichar with the sadhus, so not only like vichar doesn't just mean that when you talk about things, when you talk about spirituality, talk about life, but it also means that you actually go and sit and you meditate with the sadhus. When you go and do bhakti with sadhus, because the true vichar will come from within. So the true vichar will kind of sprout from within. And for you to be able to tap into that, you have to kind of do Simran and Bhakti. So Maharaj is saying, and that's the turi as well. So there's actual physical turi as well, and that's quite kalyankari. So sometimes people sort of kind of just say, oh, it's just a metaphor, but it doesn't really matter about the charan turis, itself. Like you see people do Jodyan di seva, that's collecting sadhuan di turi. So those people who can't go to those rivers to bathe, Maharaj is saying that you don't have to go to those rivers to bathe. That actually can be done if you just go and do sadh sangat. So Guru Sahib Ji actually, this analogy Maharaj gives in this Mag Majan Sang Sadhu Turi Karisnan. So that place, as I said, the Pragraj, Maharaj is saying the Pragraj is actually sadh sangat. So when you go to Pragraj, that is Sadhuan di Sangat. And then Maharaj then gives an analogy of what those three rivers are, Nadiyan. So Guru Sahib is saying that then when you go there, when you go and do Sangat, say if you go to the Gurdwara Sahib and you're doing Sangat, you actually go into that Pragraj. And Maharaj is saying, when you actually listen to Guruji's Upadesh, when you're listening to Katha, when you're listening to Bani, listening to Simran, that's like Ganga, that's like having Ishnan in that Ganga. And then Maharaj is saying, when you actually start applying those sort of Upadesh, those vichar of Vaheguruji, of Sadhguruji to your life, that's like bathing in Jamuna. And then Maharaj says that the third one, which is a Saraswati, now that is Gupt, so you can't see it. They say that you can't see where it comes from, and you can't actually see it kind of going into the rest of the two Nadiyan. But Maharaj is saying that one, that is Gupt, that is hidden, that is actually then, if you listen to Satguruji's Updesh, disclosure, what Sadhguruji is saying, Sadhguruji's Gurbani, that's bathing in Ganga. And then if you actually apply it to your life, that's bathing in Jamuna. But when you do that, what will happen, that from your heart within will come the Saraswati. So the Gupt one, that's hidden, that hidden is that prem in your heart. From your Rida will then blossom, and nobody can actually see it. Because when in your heart, when that actual prem, that love for Paramatma kind of intensifies, you can't see it. So that's what Guru Sahib is saying, that make that the Pragraj, and make that the Tribani, the three Nadiyan, and then do Ishnan in Sadhuan di Tudi, and go to Sadh Sangat and those sadhus, and sort of do have that Ishnan. So this is like the message in this month as well. So people would tend to go to different places to go and have Ishnan, and obviously we're going to talk about Mukthe Sahib as well, where people go and and they do Ishnan. There's a big Mahatam, like there is big importance of having Ishnan as well. So it's all kind of intertwined together that Guru Sahib Ji has given us. Just like how when Amrit is prepared, you have the jal, you have the pani, and then you have the bani as well. They're together, because water is the only element that can actually hold like the shabd. So when you speak into or near pani, whatever you're saying, that has an effect on that pani. So it is a huge kind of like a difference on your physical self as well when you go and have these ishanans as well. So Guru Sahib is saying that do that as well. You go to these places, you have that Ishanan, but at the same time, you do Sadhan di Tood Ishanan as well. And then going to the Gurdana and having, sort of Charan Tood. Just on a personal level, like I was saying before, sometimes people kind of, say, well, you don't really need this physical aspect to it. It's just a metaphor, the Toodi is. And then people who kind of like doing Jordan di Seva, and then and then they put that tood when they wipe the shoes of the sangat, and then they that dust that they're collecting, they're like, oh, perhaps it's not this is not what Guruji meant, right? But from a personal experience, I can just share a very simple thing that's happened with me. Now sadhu, the tood, the actual physical thing, it's just like kind of when I experienced that of an actual real sadhu, like that can actually change, bring about a change within you, which it did for me. Because there was one Chardi Kala Gursik, and he was quite like a Naam Abhyasi, like, so, he would do a lot of Naam Simran and stuff. And I was just talking to him. And then he was just asking me, like, sort of, when you talk to Gorsik, they don't ask like, oh, like worldly things, or have you seen the new, series on Netflix or whatever, like, things like that. But they just talk about the real thing. They're like, how's your Amrit Vela? And I was just like, well, sort of, there's no kind of. I was just like, kind of, whoa. And nobody asks me that like straight away, so it caught me off guard. And I said, look, my Amrit Vela is non-existent. I'll be honest with you, I find it difficult. And then he said, koi nahi, ho juga, don't worry, Maharaj ji kirpa. And then that after that, then they went in to do sangat, and I basically did Jordan di Seva. And then when I did Jordan di Seva that day, and then I had the tood, basically I rubbed that tood on my forehead, and Maharaj did, sort of did kripa, that like kind of like, sort of alles is like, that laziness kind of that stops you. I found that for like weeks on after that, that kind of disappeared from me. I felt that actual physical change. So, and obviously you have to kind of build on it. And so Maharaj will give you that to kind of like, sort of kickstart you, and then you actually basically got to do the rest of the hard work yourself. But for those few weeks after that, I felt that, something inside me just changed from just, from sadhana di Turi. So I don't know how everybody else feels about it. They have their own sort of thoughts on it. But mine is, that is also just as important. We sangat di Tur jehdi chardi. So Mag Majjan Sang Sadhu Turi Karishanan. So go to the Guru Kar this month. Go to those asthans like, Mukthe Sahib, or Harmandir Sahib, Guru Ramdas Maharaj Sarovar. Have a Sanan, and then also like, sort of listen to Guru Sahib's Upadesh. So, and all of that. So that's like the month of Mag that Guru Sahib talks about, that where people used to go and do that. Then they started focusing on Sadh Sangat as well. So that brings us to the third topic. I apologize if I'm going kind of like too fast and things like that. But now the third one obviously is Milla Muktsar, so as known as Maghi, you know, and the Charlie Mukthe, the 40 liberated ones, as they're called, Charlie Mukthe, jede mukt ho gaye. So Mukti is liberation, and those 40 got liberated. Now, for this, the background to the Charlie Mukte's history. So on this day, sorry, not on this day. I can't remember the Charlie Mukte the actual day was, but it was on that day the Charlie got the 40 got liberated, but there is like a backdrop. There's a background to that story, and then that Saki begins in Anandapur Sahib. So as most of you know, that Anandapur Sahib was a Killa fort where you had other Killa around, like sort of Lohgarh Killa, there is well Kesgarh, and those Killa that are around Anandpur Sahib. That's where Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj was for almost about 8 months. Guru Sahib Ji was there, and they were surrounded by 10 lakh Fauj. Now 10 lakh is a million. So those Fauj consisted of 3 lakh ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਹਾੜੀ ਰਾਜੇ ਸੀਗੇ. So the 300,000 from the 10 lakh. So from a million, the 300,000 came from the Hindu hill Raje. And then the rest kind of came together. The Mughal that were under the command of Zabardast Khan and Wajid Khan. And they surrounded those, and they were there. Basically, they were called by the Hindu Raje because they wanted Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj out of the picture. So they tried before, and they felt that it is just impossible for us to defeat Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj. We need help, and they asked Aurangzeb's help, and he sent another 700,000 Fauj. So they had surrounded the Killa of Anandpur Sahib, where Maharaj was, and amazing things happened. There's like a big Lama Itihas. So I'm just going to select few things from it that are related to the Muktsar Sahib and the Jang of Jali Mukthe. So Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj is in there, and the Mughals now are finding, and the Hindu Raja are finding it every single day so difficult to actually penetrate through the walls of the Killa, the gate of the Killa, to actually go and either capture or kill the Singhs and Maharaj. And to the point where it became really embarrassing for them. There were like not many Singhs inside. Obviously, Guru Sahib Ji's family is inside. The Panj Pyare and Guru Sahib Ji's obviously Sahibzade. And roughly about sort of 300 to 400 Singhs that with Maharaj. And they are surrounded by 10 lakh power, like a million. And it had become really embarrassing for them. And every attempt that they made to kind of got into the Gilada fort, they were basically fought back, and they suffered heavy casualties. They tried cannons, all sorts, different kind of strategies, but they were all kind of they were all unsuccessful. So it came to a point where they decided, okay, what we're going to do now, because every time they would go close, then the Singhs and Maharaj inside would basically fire at them, and then the Singhs would come out and then fight them, and then they would suffer heavy, sort of losses, the Mughals and the Hindu Raja would. So they had stopped going near the Killa. So they had set up camp sort of miles away. So there was an incident when they were sitting just about 2 miles away. So they had set up camp 2 miles from the Killa, where Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj then fires a tir from Anandpur Sahib. Now, this tir goes and hits the little manja like they're sitting on. So this Wajid Khan and Jabardast Khan, so these two generals of the Mughal force, they were sitting there just playing shatranj. Shatranj is like a chess they were playing. And Maharaj sent a tir and then hit the leg of the manja that I was sitting on, like a bed, you could say manja, hai and he actually broke the pawa, the leg, and it kind of the manja obviously then fell, and then them two fell as well, and then they became really fearful, thinking that if Maharaj Tir can come this far, then we need to kind of like set the camp even further. And then Maharaj fired that tir with so much force and accuracy as well. And then they were talking amongst themselves, thinking that Maharaj has some sort of black magic that he uses to so fire these arrows. So it's not impossible for it. But then Maharaj fires another tir, and that has a letter attached to it. The letter says that do not think that I am using some sort of power, some sort of magic to kind of fire these tir. Maharaj says this is a result of abhyas or practice that sort of we do every single day. This is the forge. This is the enemy that you are having to deal with. That this is our practice. This is our bal. This is our strength. We don't use black magic to do that. And then Maharaj said that I'm firing these tir at you because you are meant to be fighting us, and here you are playing chess. Maharaj is kind of like mocking them, thinking, you're not here to kind of play board games. You're here to fight and fight like men and come to the field. But it wouldn't go near the Anandpur Sahib Kila. What had happened and then their next strategy was that they would basically surround all the area, all the villages, pens around Anandpur Sahib, so that the food will run out inside. And once the food will run out, then obviously they'll strengthen, their strength will weaken and we'll go and attack, and then we can get whatever we want. So this was their plan now, the Mughals' plan. So for like months and months, the food became scarce, and obviously there were incidents where the Singhs, some of the group, some like Singhs would come out and then go into like little villages and they'd get food and come back. But Maharaj kept some of that sort of food away from the Singhs as well. And Maharaj was sort of like rationing the food. And obviously, not just for the Singhs, but obviously Maharaj had Kode there, the horses, and they need food as well. And the Hathi as well, Maharaj had. And, that needed food as well. They needed food as well. But what Maharaj was actually doing was actually trying to strengthen the Fauj, the Singhs. So those of you who may at some point have suffered hunger, obviously, like living these in the Western world, it's obviously, if you're really unfortunate, you have that. But most of us go to bed like not empty stomach. We have all the food, but when food becomes scarce, that's the only thing you can think of. That's the only thing on your mind, Hannah, that you just want food, you just want to kind of something to eat. And then those Singhs have not had anything to eat for like days upon days, and Maharaj still expected them to go out and fight. So they became really kind of like wary, and sort of to the breaking point, where they just wanted a way out. They're like, we can't fight any longer, Maharaj. And Maharaj saying, sort of have some prosa. Maharaj say, look, I'm doing this so that that inside of you, andro, that you become pure from inside of you. That when you have no other icha left, even to that point where you actually see certain death, and to remain faithful in sort of in those times where you have absolutely you don't see any way out, and death is kind of like for sure. And if you don't let your faith waver at that point, Maharaj is saying that's when the crunch is. That's where the crunching moment is. And if you can sort of sustain yourself and survive that, and find it within yourself to kind of carry on at that kind of vital point, that's what the difference between a normal person and a Khalsa. Maharaj said, I'm here to make you Khalas, I'm here to make you pure. So Maharaj was also kind of instilling that in them, and Maharaj was also kind of like it was like a test as well. Then who would pass? So a lot of them sort of became quite hungry, and then they came to a point where they couldn't kind of control it any longer. And then what the Mughals did, they played another sort of game where they said, "Look, Maharaj, if you just leave the Qila, we will not harm you, we will not hurt you." And then when those things heard that this is the deal on offer, they said to Maharaj, "Maharaj, take that deal. They're saying they will not harm us." We all know, if you read the history, that they broke their promises. The Mughals swore on the Quran, and then the Hindus swore on the go hanal aate di gola, on cow. So like they see the cow as a sacred animal, and patthar, like on stones, on their salgrams, on Gita they swore, but then they went back on their oaths. But Maharaj said to the Singh, just kind of hold on, hold on. But what had happened, 200 Singhs kind of like just couldn't take it any longer, and they said to Maharaj, "Maharaj, we are just going to go. Asi te chale jana hai. We can't stop here any longer." And they went, basically. And there was another person called Duni Chand. Duni Chand was the one. So like we're saying, it's like a lot of itihas. Duni Chand was the one where who Maharaj said to go and fight when the Mughals sent a hathi, intoxicated elephant, towards the Qila. And Maharaj said that, we have our hathi as well. Call Duni Chand, he'll go and fight. And then Duni Chand were like, "Oh, forget that. I ain't going fighting an elephant. I'm going home." So he just went, sort of home. And then 200 Singhs kind of like left Maharaj. And then when those Singhs went back to their homes, they kind of felt really bad afterwards, saying that sort of, we left Maharaj. And then those every pind that they belonged to, they went to, all the people in the pind were like, what have you done, that you left Maharaj? This is kind of like a big paap that you've done. You shouldn't have left Maharaj. And then they were explaining what was going on. And at that point, the Mughals were hell-bent on basically finishing any of the things that they could find, and obviously Maharaj as well. So when those 200 Singhs went back, they spoke to the village chiefs, and then those all of them in the area of Majha, so that's where they were from, the area in Punjab called Majha. So we have Majha, you have Malwa, and you have Dwapa. So those things were from like Majha. And then they decided to basically go and then find Maharaj, and then say to Maharaj that, "Maharaj, we made a mistake by leaving, but please listen to us, that the Sikhi that you want us to practice, which includes fighting the Mughals, we cannot do. We want to be your Sikh, but we don't want that type of Sikhi where you're going to be fighting the Mughals. We want you to become like how it was before, just before these wars, battles started. We want it to go back to that. And what we will do, Maharaj, is we will go and speak to Aurangzeb, and we'll come to some sort of sort of truce. And but please stop fighting the Mughals. But if you are gonna keep on fighting the Mughals, then Maharaj, then from our side, we will then basically quit as being your Sikh, that we can't carry on with Sikhi anymore." So this is what they decided, to go and sort of give that sort of option, put that option forward to Maharaj. And when they eventually found Maharaj afterwards, obviously the Chamkaur di Jang happened. So Sabjada Siddhi happened, and then sort of Maharaj is leaving now. So then they go and find Maharaj, where Maharaj is, and they say to Guru Sahib Ji, so that Maharaj, that this is what we have decided. We repent what we've done, but Maharaj, this is what we want you to do. Leave this path of waging war with the Mughals. Leave it, and Maharaj will be your Sikh. But if you insist upon fighting the Mughals, then Maharaj, we can't be your Sikh anymore. So Maharaj said, okay, now uh, you deserted me once before. And Maharaj said that I wasn't expecting you back. And Maharaj basically says, I don't actually need you back with me. And if this is what you've already decided, then do that. Just write it on a piece of paper, likh diyo badawa, that Maharaj, that we are not your Sikh anymore, that you're not our Guru anymore. So they then decided to write that. So those things that he came, they decided to, their representatives, may I add. Now, among those 200, there were things in there that didn't want this. They were like, but because they they weren't the ones who were put forward when it came to talking to Maharaj. They didn't want this deal, but because they elected people to do that for them, they kind of like went along with it. But inside, they didn't want it. They were like really sad inside that this is what's happened now, that they've written that badawa, they've written on a piece of paper that Maharaj, you are not our Guru and we are not your Sikh. And included in that was Bhai Mahasingh. Now, Bhai Mahasingh, and also included in that Sangat was Mai Pagoji, Mata Pakarji. Now, they were like Premi Sikh. Now, they were like real Sikh. They felt really disheartened that they didn't really want to kind of like, sort of, they didn't want no part of that deal. But because they had come with that group, they kind of like got associated with it. And then they ended up being on that Badawa as well. But they actually just came to have darshan of Maharaj. Mata Pakorji just wanted to come and have darshan of Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj. And so did Bhai Mahasingh. That's the reason why they came with the rest. But they didn't actually believe in that deal. So after the deal happened, and then Maharaj kind of carries on, they then decide amongst themselves. There's those Panj Singhs, the Mahasingh, and there's a few other Singhs. They said that we can't do that. We are not going to. We're not going to become Bemukh. We're not going to turn our backs on our Guru. That Badawa, that's been written where we said that we're not his Sikhs and he's not our Guru. We're going to get that ripped. So the only way we can do that is if we fight and die for Maharaj. At that point, the Mughals were still chasing Maharaj. So that Wajid Khan was still chasing Maharaj. There was a lot of Fauj that was chasing Guru Sahib Ji. And they'd come to a point where you call that, there's a place called Khadrane di Tab. Now, Khadrane di Tab was a place, it was a dried up reservoir. And it was kind of like overgrown with trees and bushes and things like that. And then he had like some flat ground, which was chosen to kind of make like a last stand for those things. It said, we're going to fight here and we're going to die here. We're going to stop those Mughals from going after Guru Sahib Ji. So those things, and then they're guilty, like, and then when they actually went back and they spoke to that group of Singhs who came from Majha, who kind of brokered that sort of who wrote that Badawa, out of those 5, when they said that we are not going back, some others joined them as well. And then their whole ginti, in total, they became 40. So those 40 then stayed behind, and then they fought at that place, Khadrane di Tab. And those 40 then killed a lot of Mughals. And amongst those 40 fighting was Mata Pakorji as well. And then though the rest of the Singhs became Shaheed by Mata Pakorji. And Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj had moved on, but from a point was watching the whole battle. And then he was actually firing thieves himself from where he was. And then he saw all the Singhs fight and became Shaheed. So after the jung was over, Maharaj went to every single Sikh that had fallen. And then Maharaj basically, sort of wiped clean their faces with his Safahana, and he kissed the forehead of each Singh. And then what Maharaj was doing was Maharaj was just giving like boons, and Maharaj was just giving so much blessings to each Singh that had fallen. And then Maharaj gets to Maha Singh, and Maha Singh still had a few breaths left in him. And then Maharaj picks him up, and then his eyes were closed, but he knew that he was going to go, but he wanted Maharaj's darshan for the one last time. So Maharaj goes there, and Maharaj says to Maha Singh that Maha Singh, open your eyes, that I'm here. And then as soon as he hears Maharaj's voice, his eyes open and he sees Maharaj. And Maharaj is saying, look, you have fought so bravely. And then Maharaj is going around and saying that to all the rest of the Singhs as well, that this is my 30 Hajari Singh, 40 Hajari Singh. What that meant was that this one Singh had taken on and killed 30,000. This one has killed 40,000, right? So then Maharaj said to Maha Singh that, Maha Singha, ask for whatever you want, that I'll give it to you. And Maha Singh said, Maharaj, that Badawa that we wrote, what I want you to do is rip that. And then Maharaj did exactly that. Maharaj said that I'm a part detta. So that sort of Badawa that you wrote, where you said that, my second, I'm not your guru, that is no more. You're all my second, and I'm your guru. So, and then my Maha Singh became Shaheed. And then that place, then Maharaj said that there will be Gurdwara Sahib here. And then, like how these 40 have been liberated, whoever comes here and does this here, comes here, they'll be liberated as well. So that's like the Muktsar. So that's the Saki of the Muktsar. Now I understand just that I had to miss out a lot of, so there's a lot of kind of like gaps. You probably thinking that, but how did this happen? How did that happen? So my apologies, because there was so much in there, and I'll try to cover everything I can. So, but if there's any questions, then you can ask. Kanji.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can ask now, Bhai Sahib. Don't be shy, guys. It's open.
That's all right.
You can ask any questions you want about what you just learned. If you need any clarifications, anything you didn't understand, and what you just heard, or even if it's off topic, any questions you need, you can definitely ask right now.
Hanji, yeah. So, like I was saying, my apologies. Because when there's so much history, kind of like your mind kind of just gets overloaded. My mind was getting overloaded with so many things. So I probably kind of I've missed some things out, and then some things probably didn't link. So if there's any gaps, thing like that, by all means you can ask me. But if not, that's all right as well.
For Mukthe Gurdwara.
Hanji?
So you said anyone that goes there and does a Ishnan,
Hanji.
liberated, right?
Hanji, yeah.
Isn't that kind of cheating? Like you just go to that one place, you do Ishnan, and you get
Yeah, no, that I don't know if you were listening to the katha in the beginning. So it's not just about, say, Tari Umar tusi, you do pop like, and then you just go now Ishnan and then you're liberated, so that's not it, how it happens. But Maharaj is saying that this is an Asthan and the whole history that goes with it, so those who then read that history, read how those Charlie Mukthe, how they became Bemukh from Guru Sahib Ji, and then realizing the mistake that they've made, and then they came back and how they actually fought the battle of Muktsar, and then got their sort of a pop washed that way. In the end, doing dhyan of Guru. So when you go to the Guru Kar, when you're having the Ishnan there, it's the history that goes with that Asthan as well. So when you read the history, it'll inspire you to make sure that you never become bemuख of Guru Sahib, है ना? And Sikhi kidan kamoni, how we earn Sikhi, and what makes us a Gursikh. And look at the Jivan of Bhai Ma Singh. Look at the Jivan of, sort of, you'd go and research the Jivan of Mata Pak or the. So it's like a collective thing, है ना? So that is attached to an asthan. And obviously, when you go and have a Shanan, Maharaj, what Maharaj does is gives you like that sort of like start, like that kind of like a push. Like sometimes
I see.
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਕਈ ਵਾਰੀ ਕੋਈ ਗੱਡੀ ਖਰਾਬ ਹੋ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ, like sometimes you have to push start it, ਹੈ ਨਾ? And then once you push start it, and then it kind of like starts rolling. When you go to these asthans, the energy that these asthans sort of have when you do an Vishnan, it gives you that initial boost to kind of like then kind of build the rest of your Jivan on, है ना?
Yeah.
Handy.
So it like starts you on the path. So you can, after you go
and
there,
gives
then yeah, in your life, then you'll be able to do the things that give you mukti. So it just starts you on that journey.
It starts you on that journey. Absolutely. It's just like, say, if you're gonna start a business, you need some capital, yeah, to start.
Mm-hmm.
And then what Maharaj, when you go to these asthans that are linked with history and has that bakshish from Maharaj starts you off with that little bit of capital that you're gonna build the rest of your kind of like empire, which is like your bhakti jivan, hai na, on. So that's why these asthans are important. That's why these rovers are important, because it gives you that initial boost. It gives you that initial start.
Yeah.
Hanji. ठीक है जी?
Hanji, thank you.
Okay जी, that's fine. That's a good question. Very good question. Right. Any questions?
Bhai Sabji, I had one question.
Uh-huh.
You're talking about Bhai Maha Singh.
Hanji, hanji.
Is that the same one that's from Mashivara, or is that a different one?
From the Machiwade jungle to the
Yeah.
Hanji, yeah. So that's a different one.
Oh, okay.
Hanji, that's a different one. Hanji. Any more questions?
Guys, if you have any anonymous questions that you want to ask but you don't feel comfortable talking on the mic, then you can just DM me, and I'll ask them for you.
Okay. I think
Okay,
I've.
there's one question that's just come in.
Okay. Yeah.
How do we find the time to really do Prem Bhakti in our everyday lives?
Oh. I think it's just like anything else that we do in our life. To be honest, we have to kind of make time for it. And the best thing is to do in most cases, if you have a good routine, and you can have a good routine, is to set aside some time, like for the one that you love. Like we set time aside for our family, our partner, husband, wife, for children. We take time, and if you want, sort of praying with Paramatma, then you have to set aside some time. And then Guru Sahib talks about the best time you're gonna find is at night time or Amrit Vela. So it's about a routine, getting a routine. Most of us, including me, don't get to sleep till about 11, 12 baje. at night. And then if we think that, we're going to be getting up and Amrit Vela to do bhakti, then, people like me can just forget about it. You know what I mean? You might do it for a couple of days or, a week or so, then you exhaust yourself. And it's about, getting a routine, and then sticking to it, sort of getting to sleep on time, waking up, Amrit Vela. And then even if it's like Mara says, that if you take one step towards me, he'll take like, quarter panda. So he will take millions of steps towards you. So if you make that initial kind of sort of start, then Maharaj will help you. So even if you're waking up for half an hour, and even if you just wake up for half an hour, and then go back to sleep, that's like still you kind of, getting into a routine. So that's what I would say, is that when we plan everything else in our life, plan a bit of bhakti in your life as well. And it might kind of like start off as a chore, as like something, mechanical, but once you keep at it, it will turn into prem. Holi prem jada na ਉਹ ਪੈ ਜਾਂਦਾ, but you have to kind of like keep at it. You may feel that you're not getting anywhere, or you're not getting the ras out as you should, but holi you'll obtain it. Hanji. Was that the question?
Yeah, that was the only question. Does anyone else any other questions? Remember, you can always DM me if you have any anonymous questions.
Yeah.
ਗੁਰਕਰਨ ਸਿੰਘ ਕਿਦਾਂ ਸਮਾਪਤੀ ਕਰਦੀ ਫੇ?
ਹਾਂਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਮਰਜ਼ੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ, it's all up to you. We got all the time in the world.
ਮੈਂ ਲਾਦਾ ਵੀ ਬਾਕੀ ਦੇ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਭਾਈ ਜਾਣਦੇ ਹੋ ਹੁਣ.
I think ਬਾਕੀ they mostly are like we've got a lot from America, Canada. They're like 5 to 8 hours behind us anyway. They've got the whole day.
ਅੱਛਾ well, let me consume the rest of their day as well, then I can start some other another vichar, and I can perhaps share recipes. I tried making noodles yesterday, tried doing some Chinese cooking, but I just ended up doing tadka to some noodles basically, so it wasn't Chinese, it was just sort of desi noodles. So I can share that recipe if anyone's interested.
Anyone have any questions about noodles now?
Also, I would just like to say thank you so much to Bhai Saab for coming out here today and doing this gatha. Sangaji, if you enjoyed today's event and would like to support our guest speaker, you can donate via PayPal to sukhi@yahoo.co.uk. The link is in the question box in text or voice. And yeah, thank you so much, Bhai Saab, for coming out today. We really appreciate it. And if there's anything else you need from our side, just please let us know. Yeah.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you. I just want to say, as I was just saying to apne, Gangadeep Singh, that it's just about kind of sharing sort of stories of our Itihas and Guru Sahib Ji, and that's all I really. And then my time, I believe, is Safala anyway. So sort of. Thank you so much again for having me.
We have one more question very quickly.
Oh, Hanji, yeah.
One more question. So
it's not about noodles, is it?
No, not about noodles though. Okay. So normally we hear about the Magh the Mahina, that like the Mahanta of kind of you get jada fal for doing more bhakti, you get more reward. Could you just talk a bit about that quickly, please?
Hanji, yeah. So it's an incentive that Guru Sahib Ji gives, है ना? That each month Guru Sahib Ji talks about, will take about something that happens in that month. So either like related to a tradition, like in this month it's about the Ishnan, hai na? going and doing Ishnan, and then Maharaj would take that and Maharaj would relate that to Maharaj would then relate it to Sikhi, है ना, to give the message. So everything, like I was saying before as well, that Maharaj gives you that initial kind of push. So when you start walking the path and when you attach yourself, like Guru Sahib Ji gives you vidhi, है ना. So vidhi is something like technique. So getting to Paramatma also requires a technique as well. And Guru Sahib Ji has that technique. And that technique is contained within Gurbani. And then when we talk about months, Guru Sahib Ji gives us a technique about the months, how to start off your month so that, you carry on like how you you start in your month so that for the rest of the month, you remain as focused, right? So, and then what Maharaj does is if we listen to Guru Sahib Ji's Upadesh and do that, then Maharaj will help us kind of live that message for the rest of that month if we choose to start off with that message for that month. So for sort of Magda Mahina or any month that starts, whatever the Guru Sahib is telling us to do in that month, if we kind of act upon it, then Maharaj will help us. Like I was saying before, Maharaj will take millions of steps towards us achieving a certain goal. So if sort of we like I was saying before, we have a sort of routine, and like if we have in our timetable, like so we this week I'm going to do this, or next week I'm going to do this. Like if we are at work and work have projects as well, or this is going to be our project, going to run for these many months, and this is what's going to happen. So if we look at Sikhi, we become smart with it and use the techniques that Maharaj has given us in Bani, then it comes quite handy. And those months, what happens is when we start practicing what Maharaj is telling us to do in those months, then Guru Sahib Ji gives us that push to achieve that goal in that month as well. So it becomes like kind of sort of special in that sense. Although it's applied to all year around, but for that month, Maharaj will kind of accelerate you that part of your Sikhi.
Does that answer the question? Is it written different about Baramaha in Tukhari and Manjwan?
Yeah, so Baramaha Tukhari is written by Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj, and Baramaha Manj is written by Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj. So the Baramaha Tukhari, it's more kind of for Jagyasus, like meaning those who are on like a spiritual path already, and it kind of like has like really deep kind of like meanings. Whereas Baramaha Manj was when Baba Buddha Ji and some other Gursikhs came to Guru Arjan Dev Ji Maharaj and they said, Maharaj, that Guru Nanak Dev Ji Maharaj jede Baramaha that's obviously for Jagyasus, kind of like those are advanced kind of like stage. But for armed people, everyday people, what they understand, could you give us a Pradesh about the months to kind of like those of us who kind of like at like a beginners level kind of thing. So although Barama Maj also has really deep meanings as well, but they are easier to understand sort of initially by people who are like kind of beginners on the path of spirituality.
Yeah, answers the question. Yep, same goes answer the question. ठीक है. Thank you so much for that, Bhai Sahib Ji. ਤੁਹਾਡਾ time ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕੀਮਤੀ time ਕੱਢਿਆ ਆਪਣਾ. And
No, thank you.
already asked you a few
Thank you.
days as well, so it's kind of short notice. So
No, thank you again, and my apologies if I put anyone to sleep or if I kind of made you throw your phone or break it. I don't know.
no. बहुत बढ़िया ਕੀਤਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ. Thank you so much for coming and ਸੰਗਤ ਨਾਲ ਬਹੁਤ ਪਿਆਰ ਜੁੜਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੈ. So ਬਸ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਦੱਸੋ ਅਗਰ ਕੋਈ ਸੇਵਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਆ ਤਾਂ ਕੋਈ ਕਮੀ ਰਹਿ ਗਈ ਸਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਦੱਸੋ.
No, thank you so much, and maybe next time I'll share my my noodles recipe.
Yeah, definitely.
See, yeah.
ठीक है जी, इतनी समाप्ति कर
ਓਕੇ
देते हैं फिर जी।
ਓਕੇ ਜੀ
फिर
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
साइन
ਜੀ ਕਾ
फिर
ਖਾਲਸਾ
वाहिगुरु जी का खालसा, वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह।
ਫਤਿਹ
Sangat ji, can we please get a Jakarta?
बोले सोनहाल
Sat
ਸਤਿ
Sri
Sri
Akal.
वाहिगुरु जी का
जी का
खालसा
खालसा वाहिगुरु जी की फतेह।
ਫਤਿਹ